So the last time we heard anything about Shadow of the Tomb Raider was in a short teaser trailer back in March. At E3 this year, we learned a lot more about this game, which is set for release on September the 14th, and thankfully will be available on PC, Xbox One, and PS4. So it's not a timed exclusive, which makes me very, very happy. Eidos Montreal have said that this is a culmination of the Origins trilogy, that it will actually be Lara's defining moment, and effectively it will be the end of the beginning. So we will finally see in this game Lara ultimately come into herself and become the legendary Tomb Raider that we all know from the original games. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how her story progresses. Now, one of the key things that they have sort of talked about at E3 is just the fact that this is going to be the darkest Tomb Raider yet, and that we can expect the story and the world and everything to be very dark, very deadly, very serious. And do you know what? I'm really digging that. I'm really digging that a lot. I love the fact that we're going to get a grittier, darker Lara, and that obviously we're going to see how that's going to affect the story. So back in 2013, obviously when the original Tomb Raider came out, one of my favorite games of that year, I am a huge fan of the Origins trilogy, so I'm very much looking forward to the third game coming out, and I will definitely be playing it. But in the original Tomb Raider in 2013, in the reboot Tomb Raider, let's say, we got to see a very young, very naive Lara. She just really graduated from college, was kind of shipwrecked on this island, and effectively had to survive and had to claw her way and fight her way to save her friends and also survive this island and all the deadly threats to her own safety and security. So effectively we got to see Lara go from this really naive, innocent young woman, and we really got to see her kind of lose her innocence. Now with Rise of the Tomb Raider, that kind of continued. Lara started to kind of accept her heritage and her connections to her father and his work, and started to investigate her father's work, and particularly the connections to Trinity. At the end of Rise of the Tomb Raider, she does discover some quite dark, tragic connection between her father and Trinity, which I won't tell you here because obviously I don't want to spoil it for you if you haven't played the game. But very much we can see that Lara progressively through the first two games has become kind of darker and a little bit more cynical, and she's almost kind of losing her humanity in her struggle to survive, and also in a lot of the sort of revelations that she's had with Trinity and obviously her father. And we've started to see this slow sort of fall and this slow kind of progression into the darkness and kind of giving in to those darker instincts. And we can definitely see that through some of the gameplay that we've seen at E3. We got to see a stealth section, a combat section, and it really did showcase just how dark and brutal this Lara is. If we look at the original Tomb Raider back in 2013, we've basically gone from this
oh God!
to this. So it's very clear that Lara is losing her humanity. The way in which she takes down a lot of these Trinity soldiers and enemies is so brutal and so vicious, and it's very clear that there's so much hatred there, and that she's so cold and calculated in the way that she's taking down these soldiers, that clearly Lara has kind of given in to the darkness. Now that is very much clearly a theme in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and I really like it. And I really like the fact that Lara is going to have to address this darkness within herself, and hopefully, regain her humanity and overcome it. So the basic premise and setting of Shadow of the Tomb Raider is it is set in South America. A lot of the game is set in kind of the jungle, dark jungle environments. Now, when you see jungles, you usually expect them to be lights and bright, lots of green, lots of oxygen, life-giving almost. But actually, from all the trailers that we've got, this jungle just seems so deadly, so oppressive. A lot of the light's hidden behind sort of the leaves and the trees, and you definitely get this feeling that they are going for a darker vibe. So Lara basically is on the hunt for a Mayan artifact, and she's trying to get there before Trinity. She basically believes that Trinity want to use this artifact to effectively control mankind and reshape human history in their own image, to their own kind of benefit. And Lara believes quite narcissistically that only she can stop Trinity, and that she has to get to this artifact before them. Unfortunately, at the beginning of the game, she does get to that artifact, and unfortunately there are very serious repercussions, and Lara unwittingly unleashes a Mayan apocalypse on South America and pretty much the world, and she has to kind of come to grips with her own actions, and the fact that her actions have very real consequences. So I like the fact that we're actually going to have a Lara here that's very fallible. I always find heroes for me are more interesting if they have human elements to them. Of course, a lot of what Lara does is quite incredible and almost superhuman in some of the abilities that she has and in her intelligence. But I love the fact that we're going to have a Lara here that's quite human, and then ultimately can make mistakes and does make very serious mistakes and very serious consequences. So this is obviously a more experienced Lara, more mature, obviously more self-assured, and kind of knows what she is capable of. Unfortunately, it sounds like that gives her a kind of an arrogance in what she believes she can do, and that obviously she thinks she's the only one to sort of save the day, so to speak. I do like the fact that Jonah's going to be in it, because it looks like he's going to be like the conscience for her, and that he's going to be a reflection on Lara. So obviously Jonah, we know, is going to quite sort of aggressively attack her for sort of her narcissism and her weaknesses and her actions, and I think that should make for some really powerful moments in the game. So the story premise for me, and the theme of this darkness, and the theme of Lara making mistakes and being fallible and having to sort of overcome those to save the day and rediscover her humanity, I think is really interesting and really relevant. And it sounds like the perfect culmination to her story, because this fall to darkness hasn't only happened within Shadow of the Tomb Raider, it is something that we have seen over the last two games. For those obviously that have played the first two games like myself, it is something definitely that we've seen progress throughout those games. And there've been moments in those games where I've just kind of gone, oh, that's really brutal, and almost sort of found that a little jarring and struggled to kind of accept that, or to try to empathize with Lara on a couple of occasions. So it'll be really interesting to see how that's going to play out. Now, in terms of the gameplay, there's a lot of new features within Shadow of the Tomb Raider that sound really interesting, and again are also going to add to this kind of dark sense and this bigger, more dangerous kind of world. And we'll also showcase the fact that Lara is more experienced, more self-assured. And of course, if Lara's more experienced and more self-assured, then they just need to basically raise the challenge bar for Lara. So enemy AI, we are told, are going to be a lot smarter, a lot more aggressive. Tombs are going to be bigger, and tombs are actually going to be deadlier. There are going to be traps, there are going to be puzzles that you have to solve, and when you're exploring tombs, there is going to be a very real sense that you are in danger and that they're trying to take you out, that they are dangerous places to be and to explore at your own kind of peril. So I love the fact that everything is just sort of more deadly. Everything kind of seems to be against Lara, and I think that's going to be really interesting. So there's a couple of new gameplay mechanics. We have the new rappelling option, section for Lara, so she can rappel down sort of cliff faces, run and use it to run along walls. The reason that this has been brought in, I think, is because of this sense of Lara falling and going down into the depths and down into the darkness. In a lot of previous Tomb Raider games, a lot of the movement and navigation was always sort of moving up. You were climbing the mountain, you were always looking up above you to see, you know, the tomb at the top of the mountain, or looking at beautiful vistas and sort of being really impressed by them and their size and light coming down. So everything was always about climbing up and being kind of, you know, very hopeful and that kind of thing. Well, in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, this new rappelling mechanic means that for a lot of the game, you're actually going to be sort of rappelling down into dark caves and down into tombs, and everything's going to be a lot darker, and that's going to be really, really interesting, that different dynamic. So it's obviously going to change navigation quite significantly. As well, the other feature that's got me really sort of interested, a little anxious, a little excited, a little both, is the new swimming mechanic. Underwater swimming sections for me have always been incredibly stressful. I always tend to feel really claustrophobic in these kind of sections, and I tend to panic a lot, and I don't like that sense of like, you know, running out of air. I think, you know, in the original Tomb Raider games, there were some really scary underwater sections, and even like in Sonic 2, like there's underwater sections there where, like, you know, that little like ringtone and that musical cue of like when you're going to run out of water and Sonic's going to drown, that still haunts me, man. That still haunts me. So there are going to be underwater caverns, underwater sections, and this is I think they said that this is going to be underwater survival. That's what they're kind of going to be going for. So in order to, you know, if you want to explore these underwater sections, that's at your own peril, at your own risk. You'll be navigating. They're going to be darker. There are going to be air pockets that you can swim into. There will be eels, there will be piranhas that will attack you, and even with navigation, you know, they're not very set linear paths where it's very obvious, you know, where the air pockets are, and they don't really feel like a challenge. These underwater sections, you know, you can take wrong turns, you can swim the wrong way, and ultimately that could result in your death. So these underwater sections sound intense, sound exciting, sound nerve-wracking, and should be really, really interesting. And I love the whole idea of uncovering tombs by having to swim underwater. The last thing really to talk about in terms of sort of new gameplay is the new kind of focus and emphasis on stealth. Eidos Montreal have said that this is a more experienced Lara, and that because of the setting in the jungle and everything, that they're wanting to focus a lot more on stealth. I think there's a part early on in the game that they mentioned where Lara comes across a jaguar, which she's kind of hunting, and ultimately another jaguar basically gets the drop on her, and it kind of reveals to Lara, you know, that the way to survive in the jungle, you know, is through sort of pouncing on your enemy and then hiding, and that sense of fear. So ultimately Lara becomes the jaguar to take down Trinity and to take down these soldiers, and you do have a number of sort of stealth gadgets and stealth moves at your disposal. There's one really just lethal move where she kind of does like a Batman takedown from above, where she shoots an arrow into one of the soldiers, I think through his neck or his jugular, and then sort of yanks him up through the tree and kind of sort of hangs him from a tree branch, which is just so friggin' aggressive and just absolutely lethal and deadly. There is something called the Jaguar's Fear, which is a special arrow, poison-tipped arrow kind of. So what it is, you shoot this into an enemy soldier, and basically it causes them to kind of go a bit crazy, start to see threats everywhere, and they'll start attacking their friends and their comrades, and ultimately kind of going crazy and shooting at them. And then ultimately it looks like this arrow is lethal, because they'll then sort of drop down dead. So it does feel very much that this stealth section is very much about sort of creating that fear, being part of the darkness, part of the jungle, and using it to your advantage, so hiding sort of in trees, up tree branches, using the hiding in sort of vine walls, painting your face and your arms in mud so you're camouflaged. It just looks absolutely lethal. It looks totally insane. For the first time as well, they have sort of said that in order to encourage that stealth element, that actually when you do end up having to go into open combat, if you do get discovered, if you are able to get away and hide for a time, the enemy AI will actually stop looking for you and you can go back into stealth. Now that's something that you couldn't do in the first and second game. Once you were discovered and you went out into open combat, that was that. You had to, you had to go out into full-on action, and I love the fact that you have the option to go back into stealth. And if you're like me, if you always have the option to play stealth or to go in action guns blazing, I will always take that stealth option because I just love stealth gameplay. So I will always go down that route. So I love the fact that they're actually expanding on the stealth elements. There is going to be a big hub world as well in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which apparently is the biggest hub that they've ever created. I think it's called Petiti or something, and it's going to be 3 times bigger than any previous hub they've had before. This hub is going to be sort of a side element that you can explore, and it's going to have side quests, challenge tombs, and people to actually interact with. And there will be sort of social puzzles for you to undertake, where you have to sort of talk to particular people and figure out what it is that people want, and obviously go and get that for them. So that sounds very sort of kind of RPG. And that sounds really interesting. I love the whole idea of side quests in a Tomb Raider game. That sounds really interesting. And they have promised that there will be more tombs, a lot more tombs in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So Shadow of the Tomb Raider looks and sounds really interesting. I love the more adult sort of theme that they're going down. I love the fact that they're going to tackle these issues with Lara, that she's obviously losing some of her humanity, that she is fallible, and that she's going to have to overcome those personal weaknesses and issues that she has to become the legendary Tomb Raider. I love the new addition of the new rappelling mechanic. Underwater swim sections sound great, scary as hell, but great. And obviously the new stealth focus and element sounds really good too. So yeah, Shadow of the Tomb Raider sounds just fabulous. It sounds really interesting, and I'm definitely going to be picking this up, I think, on day one, because it just sounds really, really good. And I've played the first 2 games, so I'm absolutely wanting to see how this story resolves and how Lara's origin story is going to end. But anyway, Shadow of the Tomb Raider looks really, really interesting. What do you think of this game? Let me know in the comments section below. Is it something that you're super excited about? What do you think about the new darker theme? And what are your general thoughts on it? Let me know in the comments section below. I'll be back again with more videos later on, so look forward to that. Anyway, hope you guys have a great week. Take care, and as always, happy gaming. Bye, guys.